Hello and welcome to TIOL Tube. I have with me the former Treasury Secretary of the United States and a member of the G20 Independent Expert Panel, a living legend, Mr. Larry Summers, who happens to be in New Delhi. And I'm really thankful to him and his team for squeezing a few minutes for this interview. Thank you, sir. It's really wonderful to have you with me. And let me begin with the first question. As you are aware, the India and the New Delhi hosted the G20 summit recently. How well it was done?
I think this was a important event for India and an important event for the world. The world, in important respects, is on fire. We have tremendous adverse climate consequences that we have seen in the last year. We have a grim ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We have rising tensions between the United States and China. We have still present real threats of a pandemic, and we have many of the world's poorest countries facing very, very great challenges that are threatening their capacity to cope. That is a moment when international cooperation is of epic importance, and I believe we came forward with as much of that as we could reasonably have expected at this meeting. And that's a tribute to Prime Minister Modi. That's a tribute to the team that he had around him. And while there's an enormous amount of work to be done, I am gratified by the progress that has been made.
Absolutely, sir. So as you rightly put it, so the climate finance was one of the most contentious issues, and the developed economies in the global south, they have been always talking and fighting over it. So how do you think so this issue can be dealt with more amicably and more efficaciously in the coming years? The climate finance
I think
issue.
the place to start is with the recognition that any strategy that asks the developing world to do without energy-intensive development is a prescription for failure. It is not right morally to ask developing countries to sacrifice because of what has been put in the air by the countries that have developed first.
Right.
It is not politically practicable to expect their citizenries to do without the fruits of what energy can bring. The remarkable and fortunate development of the last decade is that we have seen immense progress in the capacity to bring down the price of energy sustainably. That is an enormously complex topic, but it comes down most fundamentally to two things. More and more things can be electrified, and electricity can be produced in more and more sustainable ways. And the great challenge of the next decades is going to involve in very great ways making a transition to a more renewably based economy, and also to healthier use of fossil fuels where that is inevitable.
Right.
We need to learn the language of both and rather than the language of either or. Both renewables and a continuing role for fossil fuels. Both pricing carbon and subsidizing technology. Both fighting poverty and increasing sustainability. And I believe that for those of us who have spent our lives in the financial world, this is the next great challenge, to find the formulas and to find the approaches that will be necessary if we are to achieve what can be achieved. And I think we made a start at this vitally important G20.
Absolutely, sir. I agree with you, sir. So, in fact, coming back to this the report which you and Mr. Enkesing, which have suggested about the roadmap, and let us update about this MDB ecosystem in 21st century. So, would you like to, sir, talk about what update and how do you visualize, how exactly the world is going to achieve that?
For all the good things that have been done, with all that is positive, that MDBs as a group are not transferring, are taking back from developing countries each year just about as much money as they are lending out. That is not acceptable, given the extraordinary needs of this moment, given the extraordinary needs for transformation in the energy system, given the extraordinary needs of finishing the job of eliminating poverty globally, given the enormous opportunities that are still before us to increase child survival and to increase literacy and to promote flourishing. And so we start with the idea of tripling, a triple mandate around sustainability, around poverty reduction, and around inclusive growth. And crucially, a tripling in the lending levels of these institutions over the next decade. This is, I believe, central if the world is going to succeed. There has been progress made in terms of using the balance sheets of these institutions more aggressively. There has been financial creativity in areas like hybrid capital. But I do not believe that we have yet made the necessary commitments to meet the challenges that are before us. The risks of doing too little are vastly greater than the risks of our doing too much. And so I hope that in the wake of the commitments that have been made in Mumbai, in the wake of our first report and our second report, that this will be seen as a moment of transformation for the international financial institutions.
Sure, sir. Absolutely, sir. So post-pandemic, there have been very severe bumps to the forces of globalization. How do you look at now, sir? A lot of forces are working together, and the friendshoring and decoupling, this kind of activity is happening. So whatever the world has achieved because of globalization now, there is a fear that the world is going to lose many of those benefits we have accumulated over a period of time. So how do you look at this for the forces, the future of forces of globalization? or it will change the shape. It will undergo some kind of transformation, but the globalization will continue, maybe in a little different manner, with different kind of configuration.
I think that it is possible to envision a world in which most countries flourish, and it is possible to envision a world in which most countries do not flourish. But we are all sufficiently connected that I am very skeptical of the idea that we can have a world where some flourish and some do not. A world where some flourish and some do not is a world that is likely to be conflictual. It is a world in which those who are not doing well are likely to pull down those who are doing well. It is a world in which the flow of refugees is likely to become that much more serious a problem. It is a world in which it is likely to be impossible to elicit sufficient global cooperation to contain the next pandemic threat that will come, or to spur sufficiently universal action with respect to climate change to assure that that challenge is met. And so I believe that globalization will proceed differently. There will be a judgment that companies will make that they need to rely more on just in case and less on just in time. And that will mean more efforts to diversify supply chains and perhaps more efforts to locate supply sources nearer to the entities that are being supplied. But I do not believe that this can be a reason for deglobalization or decoupling.
Perfect. So to conclude it, sir, in fact, you are running short of time. I would like to draw your attention and seek your opinions of what exactly India should do to accelerate economic growth coupled with job creation.
First of all, I think India has come a long way. It had been many, many years since 1979, where in every year, China's growth rate had exceeded that of India's. In recent years, that has not been the case, and India has begun a process of catching up with China. That is in part a reflection of the very real challenges that China faces, I believe increasing challenges that it faces. But it is also a tribute to the power of Indian entrepreneurship. English language, the rule of law, facility with software, abundant labor still available at low cost. I believe India has immense potential to grow in the years ahead. India is most likely to do it if it is open to importing so as to be able to export at maximum scale, open to foreign investment in both directions, open to the tremendous resource represented by overseas Indians who want to collaborate and drive progress. And so I believe there is very substantial potential for the Indian economy in the years ahead. And I would hope to see India's economy grow close to eightfold by mid-century. That would represent 3 doublings,
Yes,
or an 8% annual rate. That is a very ambitious target, but I believe it is not an inconceivable target.
Thank you, sir. It was really wonderful.